We're going to begin with President Biden's renewed call for congressional action on gun violence in America.
Yeah, in a primetime address last night, the president laid out specific actions he wants Congress to take on gun control legislation and called Republican congressional opposition to the measures unconscionable.
Guns are the #1 killer of children in the United States of America. The #1 killer. More than car accidents, more than cancer. Over the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active-duty military combined.
Well, for more on this, we're joined now by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memley. Good morning, Mike. So President Biden was passionate in his address last night, but in the past, passion for gun law reform hasn't actually resulted in pretty much any changes. Did we hear him say anything that was different than previous gun violence speeches?
Yeah, good morning, Stephen. You know, over the decade and a half that I've been covering Joe Biden now, I've heard him I've lost count how many speeches, including policy speeches. And over the last year and a half that he's been president, the whole country has seen him give a number of, speeches as the explainer in chief, walking through the administration's response to maybe COVID or the economy. We've seen him as the legislator in chief, trying to talk through his economic proposals to much detriment when we've talked about Build Back Better and the like. But I think what we saw last night is the Joe Biden who the White House thinks is the best version of Joe Biden, drawing on that well of empathy. And in the case of this issue, gun violence, drawing on that frustration and even anger at the inability to get something done. This, as I was talking to White House officials after the speech, was, in their view, a right side of history speech. There's a lot of questions about whether this speech last night helps or hurts the very sensitive congressional negotiations happening among the small group of senators about getting something done. Really, what they said, though, is that at the end of the day, there is a right and a wrong on this issue. The overwhelming majority of the American people support the kind of policies that the president was laying out last night. So this was a speech for history for the president to make clear you're either on the right side of it or the wrong side of it.
And the president continues to push for bipartisan action on many things, including gun laws. Did he outline any kind of changes that he wants to see on a bipartisan front?
Yeah, Stephen, what was interesting is that Joe Biden, as a senator, was very involved in gun issues. He helped pass the Brady background check bill, an assault weapons ban in the 90s, as he laid out last night. We saw him as vice president working with President Obama to lay out executive actions that the administration could take. A lot of the proposals that he outlined last night were not new. And they are not part of the congressional negotiations right now, but there was a long list that he thought were important. Let's listen to the president lay those out.
We should limit how many rounds a weapon can hold. I also believe we should have safe storage laws and personal liability for not locking up your gun. And if you don't, and something bad happens, you should be held responsible. We should also have national red flag laws so that a parent, a teacher, a counselor can flag for a court that a child, a student, a patient is exhibiting violent tendencies, threatening classmates, or experiencing suicidal thoughts. It makes them a danger to themselves or to others. We can't ban assault weapons as we should. We must at least raise the age to be able to purchase one to 21.
Now, what's interesting is that some of those specific proposals he's laid out, including the red flag law, they may not be part of the congressional negotiations right now, but some of them are policies that Republicans have supported at the state level. One of them in particular that has the eyes of the White House, Republican Senator Rick Scott. He was the governor of Florida after the Parkland shooting. And this is something that they really want to make sure if he's going to vote against it now, they're going to hold up against something he did as governor.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see if there is bipartisan action. Mike Memley, thank you.
Now to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we're learning more about the mass shooting at St. Francis Hospital. Police say the gunman brought an AR-15 style rifle used in the shooting just hours before the rampage that left 5 dead, including himself. He also carried a letter making his intentions clear. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now with the latest. Vaughn, good morning. Walk us through how exactly this happened and why. Do we have any insight into the shooter's motive?
Yeah, good morning, Zinkley. And another shooting in which is frankly senseless. This individual, however, according to police, came in with very specific intentions. This was the second floor. This was the orthopedic wing of this expansive St. Francis Hospital campus here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he came with the intention of targeting one particular individual, the orthopedic surgeon, who on May 19th did back surgery on him. This shooter was here through May 24th before he was released, and then he came back for a follow-up on May 29th, and then it was on Wednesday afternoon when he returned yet again, but this time with the intentions to kill. Take a listen to the police chief yesterday.
We have also found a letter on the suspect which made it clear that he came in with the intent to kill Dr. Phillips and anyone who got in his way. He blamed Dr. Phillips for the ongoing pain following the surgery.
Authorities said that he entered from the second floor parking garage into this orthopedic center there, which was on the second floor. When he began firing, they found 30 shell casings from the AR-15 that he had, as well as 7 shell casings from that handgun that he was carrying as well, Zinkley.
Really harrowing details, Vaughn. And between the manifestos and the letters shooters at times leave behind, I think it's crucial that we center and honor and remember the victims. In this case, 4 victims, including the target of the attack, Dr. Preston Phillips. What are you learning about those victims?
Yeah, you can see them right there. Dr. Phillips was that orthopedic surgeon, and then you've also got Dr. Stephanie Huson. You've got Amanda Glenn, who was a receptionist working here, and then William Love, a patient. And as you just heard the police chief outline, this gunman intended to take down anybody that got in his way, and authorities were saying here late yesterday that that's exactly what these individuals did. Over the course of those several minutes, this became a firing squad essentially here. And this is where potentially, when we're looking at the timeline or that authorities have laid out in terms of when the 911 call came in to the point in which they entered this facility here, there is the potential that even more individuals could have been gunned down. But from what authorities, the picture that they are painting based off of the witness accounts here, that these individuals tried to help in this situation as this gunman particularly intended to hit this one particular sergeant.
And as if this isn't horrible enough, Vaughn, there's already been an intense debate recently about how police should approach these active shooter situations, which is understandable given the volume of mass shootings we've been seeing. What do we know about how law enforcement there in Tulsa responded to this shooting?
Yeah, look at this, especially in contrast to Uvalde here. When you're looking at the timeline, number one, this AR-15, I think it's important to note, was purchased down the road at a local gun store at about 2 p.m. Fast forward, less than 3 hours later, at 4:52 is when authorities say they received the first 911 call indicating that there was a gunman here on the second floor. That is when, at about 4:55, 4:56, they say that the first police officers entered here, this facility. And then it was just 39 seconds later, authorities say, that after shouting Tulsa police, they heard one final gunshot. And they believe that gunshot was that self-inflicted gunshot wound that the gunman used on himself here. Again, so you're talking about 4:52 from that first 911 call coming in to about 4:56, 4:57, in which the gunman was ultimately down. And again, authorities saying there was one woman that was found hiding underneath a desk at his feet there, as well as other individuals that are escorted out. And authorities are suggesting that quick response time could have saved multiple other lives. Zinkley?
Quick response, but no less horrifying. Vaughn, thank you for covering this.
Now to the city of Uvalde, Texas, which continues to mourn loved ones lost in last week's elementary school shooting. And this morning, there are mounting questions about the police response to that school shooting at Robb Elementary, as 911 calls have become the focus of the investigation, along with the critical information that may not have been conveyed to officers who were on the scene at the time. Here's what one lawmaker had to say yesterday about that massive communication failure.
Last week we were told that the 911 calls were going through the incident commander. That simply is not the case. We have all failed. There's been a lot of failure here. To the one family that I've spoken to, whose daughter was shot one time only, who likely bled out. I can only say we are sorry.
Understandable emotion there. Well, NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us from Uvalde now with the latest. Priscilla, good morning. We know there were several 911 calls placed from inside the school during the shooting, many heartbreaking ones from students. What are we learning about their attempts to reach for help for those officers who were in the building at the time?
Yeah. Good morning, Stephen. This is incredibly significant. Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez, who represents this district, is now saying that those 911 calls were being dispatched to the Uvalde City Police, not the school police department. And the reason why that is so important is because the commanding officer who was making the calls that day was the school police chief, Pete Arredondo. And he has faced a lot of criticism in recent days about why police did not go in, and officials say he was the one who gave that order for police not to engage the shooter, saying that this was a barricaded subject and not an active shooter situation. And the other thing that Senator Gutierrez hit on when he spoke about all of this was wanting to get to the bottom of what exactly happened in that hallway, how many officers were there, where they were. Take a listen to what he said last night.
We know that 19 officers were in that building. Last week, I was told that there was 2 DPS officers in that room. Today, I was told that there was between 2 and 13 DPS officers at any given time. It is my hope that law enforcement over the course of the next few days finally decides to just pull the Band-Aid on this thing and tell us the truth. This community deserves to know the truth.
And Senator Gutierrez had said that he was expecting a report from the Department of Public Safety about more information about what happened in that hallway. But overnight, he tweeted that the district attorney is saying they are not going to release that report to him. We did reach out to the Department of Public Safety and the district attorney, but have not heard back. This, as the senator continues to emphasize, that these families and this community needs answers now, not in 6 months, not in a year. Stephen?
Yeah, Priscilla, it's remarkable how the details from authorities have continued to shift and change. And we are expecting to learn more about the Justice Department's review of the law enforcement response to that shooting. What is the department likely to focus on moving forward?
That review is expected to be laser focused on why it took police so long to get inside, why that order was given for them to wait and not engage the shooter, and also now more information about those 911 calls and who actually had access to them. And so these investigators are going to be looking at 911 calls. They're going to be looking at radio transmissions, body cam footage, any surveillance video from the school. And they're also going to be interviewing the officers who were on the ground and involved in this incident about what exactly happened. This is going to be a painstaking process that could take months, if not more than a year. But at the end of all of it, there's going to be a very comprehensive report about what went wrong here, what mistakes were made, and how to correct that, what lessons can be learned so that this does not happen this way again. Stephen?
Yeah, the country needs answers, but more importantly, those families need answers about what happened. Priscilla, thank you.
Now we turn overseas to a grim milestone in Ukraine. It's been 100 days since Russian forces invaded the country, and this is a war. Tens of thousands of people have been killed, with millions more displaced. Towns and villages have forever been destroyed, and those who chose to stay in their homes face risk of horrific torture or even death. Now Russian forces control 20% of Ukrainian territory as their efforts to seize the Luhansk and Donetsk regions grow more intense in the east. But President Zelensky has not given up. Ukrainian troops continue to fight back despite being outnumbered on the ground. And Ukrainian officials are renewing their request to join the EU, a move that would significantly boost support for the armed forces in Ukraine. NBC News correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now from Borodyanka, Ukraine, with more on this. Molly, good morning. Give us some insight into the damage this war has caused 100 days in. What does it look like there now compared to when the invasion first began?
Zinkley, good morning to you. That's right. We are in Borodyanka. It is one of the suburbs right outside of Kyiv that was occupied by Russian forces very early. It was hit very, very hard. Russian troops moved in with not that much kind of struggle to really take hold of this town. I want to show you, we're in front of one of the apartment buildings that was hit very hard. I arrived here in Bordianka for the first time exactly 2 months ago, a couple days after Russian troops withdrew from the town. This entire road was trash, and you can see the destruction behind me, this apartment building over here on every side, and this whole street was completely unpassable. You could not drive down this street. There were burnt out tanks, burnt out cars. The destruction was unbelievable. And of course, speaking to the people who had stayed during that occupation, we came back here today, Zincle, to meet with a woman named Thaisa. She was 80 years old. We met her very early on when we arrived into the town. And she told us, and she took us to her back garden where her son had been buried. She buried her son, like many people here, in her back garden. She told us at the time 2 months ago that she was hoping to move her son to a cemetery. When we went back behind her house today, that grave had been dug up. And so we're hoping to meet with Thaisa later today, hoping that her son was actually buried elsewhere. We also, just down the street, saw a bunch of kids out here playing, doing what kids kind of do everywhere in the world. And it is nice to see not only the reconstruction coming back, but also some of the life, some of the spirit of this town.
Yeah, Molly, you've clearly been there for so long and seen so much evolution. And I know that officials in the UK say Russia is likely to control all of Luhansk within the next 2 weeks. Ukraine is currently fighting to defend the area, which is one of the last major cities still in Ukrainian control. And hundreds of civilians are hiding in bomb shelters across that city. What do we know about those hiding and their chances of escape in Severodonetsk?
Yeah, Zincle, this is the town, the city, I should say, in Luhansk, in the Donbass that we've been talking about all week. It is where the heaviest fighting has been taking place, and it's really no longer in full Ukrainian control. So as of yesterday, which is the last kind of real specific update from the local governor there, he says 70% is now Russian controlled. There is a no man's land, and there are still Ukrainian troops holding on to part of that city. But there are still thousands of civilians. As you mentioned, we are hearing that hundreds of civilians, according to this regional governor, are sheltering in the basement, in the bomb shelters of a chemical plant. We have not spoken to people. We have not been able to get in contact specifically with those people who are sheltering. But we know that thousands of civilians are still there. There is no infrastructure, no heat, no water, no electricity. These are people, Zincle, who couldn't evacuate for a variety of reasons. They're old, they're infirm, they didn't have a ride out, or people who decided to stay, who did not want to risk leaving. At this point, though, according to local officials, there's no safe way out of that city.
No safe way out yet, and so many still there. Molly Hunter, thank you so much.
Let's bring in now Lester Munson for more on this. He's a senior fellow at the National Security Institute and a principal in the international practice BGR group. Lester, good morning. How have Russia's tactics changed since this war started, and how's the war reshaped Europe?
Well, I think we're really looking at a different phase of the war than we saw 3 months ago. Russia's goals now are much more modest than they were originally. Russia seems to be having a little bit more success on the ground. We heard a pretty grim review from President Zelensky yesterday. He talked about Russia controlling 20% of Ukrainian territory. So we're at a new phase here. This is a grind. Russia is making progress, probably measured in meters, as they do in Europe, rather than in miles, but it is significant. And they are looking, as was said earlier, to take over all of Donbass within a couple of weeks. I'm a little skeptical that Russia is going to be able to do that, but we are seeing a new phase here. Europe, the West are kind of settling in and trying to remain focused on assisting Ukraine here and not letting this turn into a frozen conflict, the kind you might see in the country of Georgia or between North Korea and South Korea.
Grind is the right word for it. 100 days in. So is it part of Putin's plan to drag this war out? And is there an advantage to doing that? And does he have the money and manpower to actually carry that out?
Well, I think he does to some extent. That's why sanctions are important. That's why what the U.S. and the EU announced yesterday, new sanctions on Russian oligarchs, Putin cronies, are significant, really putting the squeeze on people with money in that country. Limiting technology and other assets that can go to Russia is going to make a difference over the long term. It won't matter over the next couple of weeks, but 3, 6, 9 months from now, and let's hope this doesn't go on that long, that stuff will have an impact. We're also seeing the U.S. engage in more diplomacy. President Biden's going to Saudi Arabia. Number one topic for sure is going to be Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
So we're 100 days in, Lester. So finally wanted to ask you, where do you see this war 100 days from now? Is it possible one side will start to see some momentum?
I don't think that we're going to see a big shift. Of course, who knows? It's hard to predict 100 days out. I think 100 days ago, we would not have predicted where we are right now. So I think we should be very careful in making predictions. I do think there are a lot of implications of this war that are pretty clear. There's a food crisis going on in the world right now. The president of the African Union, who is the president of Senegal, is meeting with Putin today to beg for relief so that food supplies, which are critically important, can leave Ukraine because other countries are suffering because of that. So we're going to start to see even more consequences of this war in other places in the world.
All right, a lot of shifting dynamics there. Lester Munson, thanks so much.
Now let's turn back to the U.S. and get a check at your morning news now weather. Michelle Grossman, good morning.
Good morning to you both. And we continue to watch the tropics. We're watching that tropical disturbance that is now impacting parts of Florida. It's going to pick up in intensity as we head throughout the afternoon hours. So the hurricane hunters were in there a couple hours ago. They found 40-mile-per-hour winds. That's tropical storm force winds, but they didn't find a closed circulation. So that will happen later on today. Most likely will become Tropical Storm Alex. It's just not there yet, even though it has tropical storm force winds. We do have tropical storm warnings. That's in the orange here for central and southern Florida, the Florida Keys, and also the Bahamas. And we're going to be seeing torrential rainfalls we head throughout today and also Saturday. So here's the track and timing for you. We do expect it to become an official tropical storm later on today. And we do expect heavy rain beginning in South Florida. We're seeing some light stuff right now. So if you need to get things done, now is the time before that rain really picks up this afternoon. Now by Saturday morning, landfall in Southwest Florida, we could see isolated tornadoes, especially as it does make landfall, and could see some peak storm impacts around midday. And when I say impacts, we're talking heavy rain. We're talking gusty winds and also the chance of some severe weather. Then it's out of here on Sunday. It's going to stay well off the coast, moving to the northeast over the open waters of the Atlantic. So let's talk impacts. Torrential rainfall and flooding. That is the biggest one by far. Significant flash flooding, urban flooding, looking at the chance for flooding in low-lying areas. We could see 2 inches per hour as far as the rainfall rates. And we already have saturated soil, so any rain that does fall is going to contribute to any flooding, and we're going to be watching that really closely. So looking towards a severe threat, we're looking at the chance for an isolated tornado or two, and looking at the chance for some strong thunderstorms. Also winds gusting up to 50, 60 miles per hour. We're going to see some storm surge and some elevated surf, a really dangerous situation. And then we'll end it here looking at a severe threat through the central and high plains, where we could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail, and also the chance of a few tornadoes. Back to you guys.
It's that time of year, activity in the tropics.
Indeed. Get those umbrellas out.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.